If the volume of a cube is 8 cubic centimeters, what is the length of the cube? Let's start with what we know. The volume is 8 cubic centimeters. The formula for volume of a cube is side cubed. And we know what the volume is, so substitute 8 centimeters cubed for volume. So that equals the side cubed, or the length cubed. Since it's a cube, all of the dimensions are the same. So if they ask for length, we can find that. It's the same as the width and the height, which is why we just use an S instead of length times width times height. But how do we solve? So we have side cubed. If we want to solve for side, then we need to do the opposite of cubing, which is to cube root. So take the cube root of both sides. When you're taking the cube root, really what you're doing is you're finding what number times itself 3 times would give you 8. And that number would be 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, or 2 cubed is 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2. And the cube root of centimeters cubed is simply centimeters. And that equals the cube root of side cubed, which is side. Or again, length or width or height, all the dimensions are the same. So what is the length? Answer B, 2 centimeters. Simplify the following expression. 16x cubed minus 32x squared plus 8x, all divided by 4x. We need to divide each one of these terms by 4x. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this as 3 separate fractions. And now we can simplify. 16 divided by 4 is 4. X cubed divided by x is x squared. Because when you divide, you subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2. Minus 32 divided by 4 is 8. X squared divided by x, 2 minus 1, is x to the first, plus 8 divided by 4 is 2, and x divided by x, or x to the first divided by x to the first, 1 minus 1 is 0, or you can just think x, or anything really, divided by itself is 1. So x divided by itself is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. So our answer is C. Solve for x in the following inequality. 4x plus 23 is greater than negative 3x minus 6. The first thing we want to do is get all of our x terms on the same side of the inequality. I'm going to do this by adding 3x to both sides. 4x plus 3x is 7x. Bring down the plus 23. And bring down the greater than sign. Negative 3x plus 3x, those are additive inverses, so they cancel. Bring down the negative 6. Next, we want to remove 23. The opposite of adding 23 is subtracting 23. So subtract 23 from both sides. Bring down the 7x. Plus 23 and negative 23 are additive inverses, so they cancel. Bring down the greater than sign. negative 6 and negative 23. They have the same signs, they're both negative, which means our answer is negative, and we just add the numbers together. 23 plus 6 is 29, so it's negative 29. Finally, we have to divide both sides by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 1 times x is simply x. Bring down the greater than sign. And then the first thing I'll do is change this into a mixed number. Since I can't actually divide negative 29 by 7 and get an integer. So 7 goes into negative 29 4 times. So it's negative 4. 4 times 7 is 28. So that means that there's 1 left over out of 7. So it's negative 4 and 1/7. X is greater than negative 4 and 1/7. Now if we look at the answers, you'll see that all the answers are in decimal form. And we can find out what 1/7 is as a decimal by dividing. So 7 doesn't go into 1, so we'll have to put a decimal here, which means bring a decimal to the top and add a 0 to it. 7 does go into 10 one time. 7 times 1 is 7. We subtract and we get 3. Add another 0, bring it down, and 7 goes into 30 4 times. 7 times 4 is 28. We subtract and we get 2. And we can stop there because all of our answers stop at the hundredths place as well. So we could write this as x is greater than negative 4 and 14/100ths, which is answer choice A. What is the value of 6 factorial? What 6 factorial means is 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And so since we're just multiplying a series of numbers, you can multiply them in any order you want. So you can take any 2 numbers and multiply those together first, and then continue multiplying. But I'll just multiply them in order. So we have 6 times 5, which is 30, times 4, times 3, times 2, times 1. Then we can multiply 30 times 4. We have 30, 60, 90, 120. So 30 times 4 is 120, times 3, times 2, times 1. Then 120 times 3, 120 times 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. So 360 times 2 times 1. 360 times 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. So 720 times 1. And 720 times 1 is just 720. So 6 factorial is equal to 720. Answer C. Simplify the following expression. The quantity 2x minus 20 times the quantity 5x plus 10. To multiply these two binomials, we can use a method called FOIL. And FOIL stands for first, O stands for outer, I stands for inner, and L stands for last. So the F first means to multiply the first term in the first binomial times the first term in the second binomial. First times first. 2x times 5x 2 times 5 is 10. And x times x is x squared. So it's 10x squared. The O again stands for outer. So that means to multiply the two outside terms. So 2x and 10 are the two terms on the outside, the outer terms. So 2x times 10, 2 times 10 is 20, 2x times 10 is 20x. I stands for inner. That means to multiply the two terms on the inside. So that would be this negative 20 times 5x. Negative 20 times 5x. A negative times a positive is a negative. 20 times 5x is 100x. Then finally, we multiplied the last terms together. So that means the last term in the first set of parentheses or in the first binomial times the last term in the second binomial. Last times last. So that's negative 20 times 10, which is negative 200. A negative times a positive is a negative. We're almost done. The last thing we need to do is combine these like terms right here. 20x and negative 100x. So it's really 20x minus 100x. Bring down the 10x squared first. And 20x minus 100x would be negative 80x. Then bring down the negative 200. So looking at our answer choices, looks like answer A would be the correct answer. Solve for x using the following system of equations. 3y plus 10x equals 23. 18y minus 15x equals 50. There are many different ways to solve a system of equations. One is by graphing. You would graph the two lines and then see where they intersect. The solution is the ordered pair of the intersection of those lines, because the intersection is the only ordered pair that will satisfy both equations and make them both true, since it's the only point they have in common. You can also use substitution. That's where you solve for one variable and then substitute that expression into the other equation. And then there's elimination. And that's the method we're going to use now to solve for x. Since we want to solve for x, we want to eliminate y. And eliminate means to get rid of. To get rid of y, I need to multiply this whole equation by a negative 6. Because negative 6 times 3y is negative 18y. And then when I add my two equations together, 18y and negative 18y will cancel or eliminate. Negative 6 times 10x is negative 60x. And negative 6 times 23 is negative. 6 times 20 is 120. 6 times 3 is 18, so 138. And now I need to add my two equations together. 18y and negative 18y is 0. They cancel. Negative 15x and negative 60x is negative 75x. Equals negative 138 and 50. When I add those together, I'm going to get a negative, and I can subtract off to the side here. That's 8, and 13 minus 5 is 8, so negative 88. Finally, to solve for x, we need to divide both sides by negative 75. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 75 divided by 75 is 1, times x is x. And again, a negative divided by a negative will give me a positive. And we can divide those off to the side. 75 goes into 88 one time. 75 times 1 is 75. We subtract and we get 13. Add a decimal and a 0, bring it down. 75 goes into 130 one time. 75 times 1 is 75. Subtract, and we get 55. Add a 0 and bring it down. And 75 goes into 550, I believe, 7 times. 7 times 70 is 490. 7 times 5 is 35, so that'd be 525. We subtract and we get 25. Add a 0, bring it down. And we could keep on going, dividing until we find the end, but since this is multiple choice, we can already see which answer choice is correct. And that would be answer B, 1 17/100. If 2x plus 5x equals 3x plus x plus 30, what is the value of x? So first I'm going to combine like terms on both sides of the equal sign. On the left side, I can combine 2x plus 5x to give me 7x. Bring down this equal sign, and on the right side, we can combine 3x plus x. So 3x plus another x gives us 4x. And then bring down the plus 30. Next, we need to get all of our x terms on the same side of the equal sign. We'll do this by subtracting 4x from both sides. 7x minus 4x is 3x. Bring down the equals. 4x minus 4x cancels, they're additive inverses, and we bring down the positive 30. Finally, we need to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 1 times x is simply x. So x equals 30 divided by 3, which is 10. And that's answer choice D. (9x minus 3y plus 8xy minus 3). If x equals 10 and y equals negative 2, what is the value of this expression? First, we need to substitute. 9 times x, and we're replacing x with 10. So 9 times 10 minus 3 times y, and we're replacing y with negative 2. Plus 8 times x times y, so times 10 times negative 2. Minus 3. Now we need to follow our order of operations. First would be grouping symbols, but in this case there aren't any. Next would be exponents, and again we don't have any. So after that is multiplication and division, working from left to right. Starting at the left, we have 9 times 10, which is 90. Minus 3 times negative 2 plus 8 times 10 times negative 2 minus 3. Our next set of multiplication would be right here. So I'm going to bring down my 90 minus 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Plus 8 times 10 times negative 2 minus 3. Our next set of multiplication would be 8 times 10. So we have 90 minus a negative 6 plus 8 times 10 is 80 times negative 2 minus 3. Then we need to multiply 80 times negative 2. So we bring down our 90 minus negative 6 plus 80 times negative 2. A positive times a negative is a negative, so negative 160 minus 3. Now that we've taken care of all the multiplication, we're now going to work with addition and subtraction, again from left to right. So starting on the left, we're going to start with 90 minus a negative 6. Minus a negative, you can think of this like you're taking away a negative, which is the same as adding a positive. Or you can add the inverse. So we have 90 plus 6, 96 plus negative 160 minus 3. Again, we've got to continue working from left to right. So next we have 96 plus negative 160. These two numbers have different signs. 96 is positive, while 160 is negative. Since they have different signs, we need to subtract them. So I'll do that off to the side. 160 minus 96. So to borrow from the 6, it becomes a 5. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now borrow from the 1, it becomes a 0. So I have 15 minus 9 is 6. So 160 minus 96 is 64. And it's going to be a negative 64 because 160, or negative 160, has a larger absolute value than 96 does. So negative 64 minus 3. And the last thing we do is subtract those numbers. So if you think about where you are in the number line, you're at way over here on the left at negative 64. And then you subtract 3, so you're moving more to the left. Your number's getting even smaller. So it's negative 67. Another way to think about it is you have 64 negatives and 3 negatives. That's a total of 67 negatives. And finally, even another way to think about it is you can change it to adding the inverse. So you have negative 64 plus negative 3. Either way, you're going to get negative 67. And that's answer A. If a rectangle has a length of 5 centimeters and a width of 7 centimeters, what is its area? We're finding the area of a rectangle. The formula for area of a rectangle is area equals the length times the width. And we were given the length, 5 centimeters, and we were given the width, 7 centimeters. So all we have to do is substitute and solve. The area is, length is 5 centimeters, times the width, which is 7 centimeters. So the area is 5 times 7 is 35. Centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. So the area is 35 centimeters squared, which is answer choice B. In the following inequality, solve for x. Negative 4x plus 8 is greater than or equal to 48. To solve for x, we need to get x alone, which means undoing the operations that are being done to x currently. And that is negative 4 times x and plus 8. So we'll start by getting rid of the plus 8. And we can get rid of it by doing the exact opposite of adding 8, subtracting 8. And if we subtract 8 from the left side of our inequality symbol, then we must also subtract 8 from the right side to keep it even. So we bring down our negative 4x. A positive 8 minus 8 is 0, is greater than or equal to 48 minus 8 is 40. We're almost done. Now we need to undo negative 4 times x. And the opposite of multiplying by a negative 4 is dividing by a negative 4. Now with inequalities, there is a special rule you have to remember. And that is, if you divide both sides by a negative number, or you multiply both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So now instead of greater than or equal to, our sign is now a less than or equal to sign. And again, that's because we divided both sides by a negative number. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1, and 1 times x is x. 40 divided by negative 4, a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 40 divided by 4 is 10. So x is less than or equal to negative 10. Answer D. A classroom contains 13 boys and 18 girls. If a student's name is chosen randomly, what is the probability it will be a girl's name? To find probability, we need to write a fraction. And that fraction will be how many girls' names there are out of how many total names there are. So since there are 18 girls, that means we have 18 girl names to choose from. Out of, now we have to add in the 13 boys to get our total. So 18 plus 13 is 31. So 18 names out of a total of 31 names are going to be girls. If we look at our answers though, our answers are not in fraction form. Our answers are all in percentage. So we need to convert our fraction into a decimal and then into a percent. So to convert our fraction into a decimal, we just divide. 18 divided by 31. 31 can't be divided into 18, but we can add a decimal and a 0. 31 does go into 180 5 times. 31 times 5 is 155. Borrow from the 8 becomes a 7. Then we have 10 minus 5, which is 5. And 7 minus 5, which is 2. Then we add a 0 and bring it down. And 31 goes into 250 8 times. 31 times 8 is 248. We subtract and we get 2. Then you can add a 0 and bring it down. But 31 doesn't go into 20. So we get 0. Goes into 20 0 times. Now we can stop here because if you look at your answers, they don't go beyond 2 numbers. And to change our decimal into a percent, we just move our decimal 2 places to the right. So 58 hundredths is equal to 58%, which is answer C. The quantity y plus 10 squared minus 625 equals 0. Solve for y. The first thing we want to do is add 625 to both sides, because doing that is going to help us get y alone and thus solve for it. So we bring down our quantity y plus 10 squared. Negative 625 plus 625 is 0, so that just cancels out. And that equals 0 plus 625, which is 625. Well, then we want to get rid of this squared because our y is kind of locked in those parentheses. So to unlock them, we want to do the opposite of squaring, which is square rooting. So we square root both sides. And the square root and the square undo each other. They're the exact opposites of each other. So they cancel each other out, and we're just left with y plus 10 equals, and when I take the square root of 625, I get plus or minus 25. And that's because a positive 25 squared would give me 625, but also a negative 25 squared would give me 625. So we really have two answers there. So we write it with a plus or minus. And finally, to solve for y, we need to subtract 10 from both sides. So we have y plus 10 minus 10 is 0, so equals negative 10 plus or minus 25. We have two answers, and to find them, we just need to simplify. So we have y equals negative 10 plus 25, and y equals negative 10 minus 25. All I did was separate the plus or the minus into two separate expressions. Negative 10 plus 25 is 15, while negative 10 minus 25 is negative 35. So our solutions are that y is 15 or negative 35, which is answer D. If y equals 2, what is the value of the following expression? The quantity y to the 9th divided by y cubed times 2. The first thing we need to do is substitute 2 for y in our expression. So it becomes 2 to the 9th divided by 2 cubed, and that quantity times 2. And what I want to do is rewrite it. I prefer my fractions to be stacked, so I'm going to rewrite this as 2 to the 9th divided by 2 cubed times 2. When we're dividing and we have our bases the same, so in this case 2 is our base and it's the same, we simply subtract our exponents. 9 minus 3 is 6, so that's 2 to the 6th times 2. 2 to the 6th is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times itself 6 times, and then times 2. So all we have to do is multiply all these 2's. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and then times 2. 4 times 4 is 16, times, and 4 times 2 is 8. So now I just need to multiply 16 times 8. 8 times 6 is 48, carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12, so it's 128. Factor the following expression. 9x squared y minus 18xy minus 27y. The first thing we need to do when factoring is to look and see if there's a GCF for our terms. So I'm going to write down our terms: 9x squared y, 18xy, and 27y. And then I'm going to factor them to see if I can find a GCF. The prime factorization of 9 is 3 times 3, and then x squared, so that's times x, and then times y. So that is the prime factorization of this term. 18 is 2 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3, times x times y. 27 is 3 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3, times y. Now to find the GCF, we look for what all three of our terms have in common. All three of our terms have a 3 in common. All three of our terms have another 3 in common. And all three of our terms have a y in common. So the GCF is 3 times 3 times y, 9y. Now we can factor out the GCF. So we're going to factor out a 9y from each one of our terms. 9y times x squared would be 9x squared y. 9y times negative 2x would be negative 18xy. And 9y times negative 3 would be negative 27y. Now we need to look and see if we can factor this trinomial. So bring down the 9y. And if this trinomial can be factored, we're going to factor it into two binomials. Well, I know that I'm going to have x and x as my first term in each set of parentheses, because x times x is x squared. Now the numbers that go here have to multiply to give me negative 3 and add to give me negative 2. So we need numbers that, we need the factors of negative 3 that have a sum of negative 2. Put that in parentheses. The factors of negative 3 that have a sum of negative 2. And the only factors of negative 3 that would have a sum of negative 2 would be negative 3 and positive 1. So negative 3 and positive 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, and negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. And we can always FOIL it out to see if it does, in fact, we did factor correctly. So x times x would give us our x squared. X times 1 is 1x, minus 3x would be negative 2x, and then negative 3 times 1 would be negative 3. So this is our factored answer, which is answer choice C. If W equals 7, calculate the value of the following expression. 8W squared minus 12W plus the quantity of 4W minus 5 plus 6. In order to simplify, the first thing we need to do is substitute 7 for W. So we start by bringing down the 8. We're going to replace W with 7, so it's 8 times 7 squared minus 12. Again, replace W with 7, so times 7 plus, bring down the parentheses, 4 times W, or times 7, minus 5 plus 6. In order to simplify this, we must follow the order of operations, or PEMDAS. We start with parentheses, then exponents, then we multiply and divide from left to right, and finally we add and subtract from left to right. So that means we need to start with anything inside parentheses. So here we have a couple of different operations inside our parentheses. We have multiplication and subtraction. Well, again, if we consult PEMDAS, we can see that we're supposed to always multiply and divide before we add and subtract. So that means we're starting with 4 times 7. So you'll just copy everything else. The 8 times 7 squared minus 12 times 7 plus, bring down the parentheses. Finally, we get to 4 times 7, 28, minus 5, and bring down the plus 6. So we haven't finished simplifying what's in our parentheses, and that's what we'll do now. 28 minus 5. So bring down the 8 times 7 squared minus 12 times 7 plus 28 minus 5 is 23 plus 6. Now if we go back to PEMDAS, after parentheses, which we have no more of, we then simplify any exponents. And we do have exponents right here, 7 squared. So that's what we'll do next. 8 times 7 squared means 7 times 7, and that's 49. Minus 12 times 7 plus 23 plus 6. Okay, after exponents is our multiplication and division from left to right. So first we see 8 times 49. We can just go off to the side and multiply that. 49 times 8. 8 times 9 is 72, so write the 2 and carry the 7. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 plus 7 is 392. So we have 392 minus 12 times 7 plus 23 plus 6. We need to continue multiplying and dividing from left to right. So next I see 12 times 7. So we'll multiply that. 12 times 7. 7 times 2 is 14. Write the 4, carry the 1. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So that's 84. Bring down the 392 minus 84 plus 23 plus 6. So all we have left now is our addition and subtraction from left to right. So we start with 392 minus 84. I'll do that over here. So we have to borrow from the 9, it becomes an 8. We have 12 here. 12 minus 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0, and we bring down the 3. So we have 308 plus 23 plus 6. So that means we need to add 23 to our 308. That's the next thing we're going to do. 8 plus 3 is 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. And bring your 3 down. So we have 331 plus 6. And that's the last thing we're going to do is add 6 to 331. So we get 7, 3, 3. Our final answer is 337, which is answer choice C. Simplify the following expression. The square root of 3 times the quantity 5 square roots of 3 minus the square root of 12 plus the square root of 10. Since there is no operator between the square root of 3 and the parentheses, like there's no addition sign or subtraction sign or division sign, it's understood to be multiplication. So I'm multiplying the square root of 3 times all of these terms inside my parentheses, which means we're going to use the distributive property. So I'll start by multiplying the square root of 3 times 5 square roots of 3. So that's 5 times, and then the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is 3. So that's 5 times 3. The square root of 3 times the negative square root of 12 is the negative square root of, and you just multiply your numbers under the square root. So 3 times 12 is 36. And then the square root of 3 times the square root of 10. So again, we're just multiplying our numbers under the radical. 3 times 10 is 30, so the square root of 30. But we're not finished yet because we have some simplifying that we can do. 5 times 3 is 15, minus the square root of 36 is 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. Plus, now 30. You want to break down that number and see if there is any part of it that we can take the square root of. So to break it down, you can just do a factor tree. 30 is 3 times 10, 3 is prime, and 10 is 2 times 5, and those are both prime. So I have no pairs of numbers and no perfect square factors, so I can't take the square root of any part of 30. So it has to be left as just the square root of 30. And finally, we can subtract 15 minus 6, since those are like terms, and we get 9. So 9 plus the square root of 30. So our answer is A. Simplify the following expression. 2x to the 4th, y to the 7th, m squared, z, times 5x squared, y cubed, m to the 8th. I'm going to start by multiplying my like terms together. So I can rewrite this. It's multiplication, so you can multiply in any order you want. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 5 together. And then I've got this x to the 4th times the x squared. And then we have y to the 7th times y cubed. And then we have m squared times m to the 8th. And then finally we just have this z, so times z. And now we'll simplify each one of these. So 2 times 5 is 10. And so right now you could already eliminate answer choice B because we're multiplying. We're not adding 2 and 5 together. We're multiplying. And then we get to our x's. X to the 4th times x squared. And what that really is, x to the 4th means x times itself 4 times. While x squared means x times itself 2 times. So when we multiply x to the 4th times x squared, we're multiplying x times itself a total of 6 times. So it's x to the 6th. You can see what we end up doing is adding those exponents together. And it's the same thing with y to the 7th times y cubed. Let's look at that one a little differently. So y to the 7th times y cubed. Y to the 7th is y times itself 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times y cubed. So times 1, 2, 3. So what we end up with is y times itself a total of 10 times. So y to the 7th times y cubed is y to the 10th. Or again, we're adding those exponents. Then we have m squared times m to the 8th. So same concept. Again, we're going to add our exponents. We get m to the 10th. And then finally, times z. So that means our answer is D. 10, x to the 6th, y to the 10th, m to the 10th, z. Solve for y using the following system of equations. 2x minus 6y equals 12. Negative 6x plus 4y equals 42. There are several ways to solve a system of equations. What you need to keep in mind is that what you're doing is finding where these two lines intersect on a graph. So you can graph, that's one way to solve a system, is to graph both the lines and see where they intersect. And then in this case, just give the y coordinate. But you can also use substitution or elimination. And it's really your choice which one seems the best for the situation. In this situation, elimination seems to be the easiest choice. Because if I multiply this top equation by 3, I'll have a positive 6x term and a negative 6x term that will eliminate, thus allowing me to solve for y. So I'm going to multiply this entire top equation by 3. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times negative 6y is negative 18y. And 3 times 12 is 36. Now I'm just going to add these two equations together. Negative 6x and 6x is 0. They cancel. 14y and negative 18y is negative 4y. Bring down the equals. 42 plus 36 is 78. Then to solve for y, I need to divide both sides by negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1 times y is y equals a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then I just need to go off to the side and divide 78 by 4. 4 goes into 7 one time. 4 times 1 is 4. You subtracting get 3. Bring down the 8. 4 goes into 38 9 times. 4 times 9 is 36. Subtract and you get 2. Add a decimal, and a 0. Bring it down. And 4 goes into 20 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract and you get a remainder of 0. So it's negative 19 and 5/10, which is answer A. The length of a square is 15 centimeters. What is its area? Well, a square is a type of rectangle. And the formula for area of a rectangle is area equals the length times the width, or base times height. But what's special about a square is that its length and width are the same. So if we're told that the length is 15 centimeters, then that means the width is 15 centimeters as well. So we substitute 15 centimeters for the length and 15 centimeters for the width. So 15 times 15. 15 times 15, can multiply that out over here. 5 times 5 is 25. Write the 5, carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. Get rid of that, put your 0 placeholder. 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 1 is 1. And we add these up. 5 and 0 is 5. 7 plus 5 is 12. Write the 2, carry the 1. And 1 plus 1 is 2. So 15 times 15 is 225. And centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. So the area of a square with length 15 centimeters is 225 centimeters squared, which is answer choice D. If x divided by 3 plus 7 equals 35, what is the value of x? I'm going to start by writing this problem. X divided by 3 plus 7 equals 35. The first thing we want to do is subtract 7 from both sides, because a positive 7 and a negative 7 are additive inverses of each other and they cancel. So on the left side, we're left with x divided by 3. And on the right side, 35 minus 7 is 28. The opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So now we need to multiply both sides by 3. If you put this 3 over 1, now you're multiplying two fractions together, and the numerator and this denominator cross cancel, and you're simply left with x divided by 1, which is just x. So now if we determine what 28 times 3 is, we'll have our answer. 3 times 8 is 24, so write the 4 and carry the 2. And 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So that means that x is 84, which is answer C. If 2x equals 5x minus 30, what is the value of x? The first thing we want to do to solve for x is to get all of our x terms on the same side of the equal sign. We have 2x on the left side of the equal sign, and we have 5x on the right side of the equal sign. We have two options here. We can either subtract 2x from both sides, and that way we would get rid of 2x on the left side, or we can subtract 5x from both sides and get rid of 5x on the right side. I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. This is called the subtraction property of equality. Because I have the left side equal to the right side, then I could subtract the same thing from both sides and they'll still be equal. 2x minus 5x is negative 3x. We bring down our equal sign. 5x minus 5x is 0 because those are additive inverses. So we've canceled that out. And what we have left on the right side is negative 30. Now we have negative 3 times x is equal to negative 30. So to solve for x, we need to do the opposite of multiplying by a negative 3, which is dividing both sides by a negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. And 1 times x is just x. So we have x equals negative 30 divided by negative 3. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 30 divided by 3 is 10. So x equals 10, which is answer choice A. A rectangular prism measures 12 centimeters by 3 centimeters by 9 centimeters. What is its volume? The formula for volume for a rectangular prism is volume equals length times width times height. And we were given those dimensions: length, width, and height. And really it doesn't matter which one is the length, which one's the width, and which one's the height, since we're just going to multiply those three numbers together anyway. So the volume is 12 centimeters times 3 centimeters times 9 centimeters. And it's up to you which two you choose to multiply together first. Could start with 12 times 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And 3 times 1 is 3. So 12 centimeters times 3 centimeters is 36 centimeters squared times 9 centimeters. So then you could take 36 times 9. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 3 is 27. Plus 5 is 32. So 36 centimeters squared times 9 centimeters is 324 centimeters cubed, which is answer choice C. On a 6-sided die, each side has a number between 1 and 6. What is the probability of throwing a 3 or a 4? This die has 6 sides. That means our total is 6, which is the denominator of our fraction for finding our probability. We want to know what the probability of throwing a 3 or, and that is a key word, 3 or a 4. So if it lands on either one of those, we're good. So that's 2 different numbers that we could land on out of our 6 different numbers. And then of course we can simplify our fraction by dividing the numerator and the denominator both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, so it's 1 in 3. Or, written like this, a 1 in 3 chance. Simplify the following expression. The quantity 2x squared plus 3 times the quantity 2x minus 1. To simplify, we need to FOIL. The F in FOIL stands for first. So we're going to take the first term in our first binomial and multiply it times the first term in our second binomial. First and first. 2x squared times 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. X squared times x is x cubed. Next we do O, which stands for outer. So those are the 2 terms on the outside, which would be 2x squared and negative 1. So 2x squared times a negative 1 is negative 2x squared. Then our inner terms are the 2 terms on the inside, 3 times 2x, which is a positive 6x. And then finally, our last terms. So the last term in the first set of parentheses and the last term in the second set of parentheses. 3 times negative 1, which is negative 3. Then we'd want to look and see if we had any like terms to combine, and we don't. We have a cubic x term, a squared x term, an x term, and then just a constant. So that's our answer, which matches answer choice A. Simplify 9x times the quantity 3x squared plus 2x minus 9. To simplify, we need to distribute the 9x to all the terms inside the parentheses. And what that means is we have to multiply. So we multiply first 9x times 3x squared. 9 times 3 is 27. X times x squared is x cubed. Plus 9x times 2x, 9 times 2 is 18. X times x is x squared. Minus 9x times 9. 9 times 9 is 81. X. And that would be answer choice B. 27x cubed plus 18x squared minus 81x. So remember that when you multiply x times x squared, you're adding the exponents. And that's where the x cubed comes from. X times x, again, you're adding those exponents, and those have an imaginary exponent of a 1, both of them. So x to the first times x to the first is x squared. You add the exponents, 1 plus 1. And then 9x times 9 is 81x, or negative 81x because of the minus in front of the 9.